Hello YouTube, Proxy here, bringing you a full analysis of Ash's brand new combat trailer. So let's not waste any time and get right into it. And right off the bat, you might be thinking, am I watching a prequel to Warframe set in a medieval era? Nope, that's Ashes of Creation's new action combat. It now has an over-the-camera shoulder, the movement seems a bit more fluid, a costume that looks almost Warframe-esque, but not quite. Hell, in this scene I had to double check I wasn't looking at Frost. Oh, and look, a giant mushroom. Soon after, we get a short glimpse of AoC's stealth mechanic, which is of a predator-like design. Supposedly, enemies can see the shimmer in PvP. This is followed shortly by our first glimpse of action in this trailer, where we are introduced to a very nicely made dodge roll and some flailing of a spear. The spear animation could use a bit of refining, looks a bit oddly held, but otherwise looks pretty decent. One thing I did notice is the camera angles could definitely use some work. There is a brief couple of seconds where the game almost looks first person. I think it would be nice if while wielding melee weapons specifically, the camera would zoom out a little more than it is. The wand will give those Harry Potter fans out there a bit of a wet dream, though it looks quite stiffly animated currently, but I'm sure it will be smoothed out and polished over time. The meteor spell looks amazing, but possibly a bit over the top. It would be nice if the spell effects were toned down a little bit. I mean, could you imagine a raid PvP with hundreds of mages casting this kind of spell? It would be literally insane, yet at the same time a blur of red. Also, you might notice the little balls of energy left after people die that are next to their corpses. The next scene we see some sword waving. One observation is that the sword doesn't require direct contact to cause damage, which suggests weapons have a sweeping radial or cleave on use. And yet again we see a floating ball of energy after someone dies. You can also see the player got hit so hard his body literally gets chunked all over the place. It kind of brings back those good old Baldur's Gate memories, but in 3D. The next scene is quite an interesting one, as it initiates with the meteor being cast, followed by one spam which seems to have no travel time, which makes me wonder if ones are actually raycast/hit scan by design. Though more importantly, the meteor skill is recast within 5 seconds of the first one. Now this is interesting, as skills from Alpha Zero livestream all had exponentially long cooldowns in comparison, and this was supposedly done to make things more strategic. So the fact that skill cooldowns seem to have been shortened down this much is quite a change. In fact, it's one of the bigger changes from Alpha Zero, which was slow and methodical in design, to something that involves quick thinking and reactivity. Though the thought of a 5-second cooldown for a skill that literally fills a good portion of the screen, I can only imagine how much mass PvP would look like a firestorm right now. Still, I definitely feel like it's a step in the right direction. So in this next scene we see this bow user pretty much headshotting this guy's brains out. Now during the trailer there was a debate as to whether headshotting was a thing, whether the game is soft targeting, etc, etc. Well, Stephen joined us on the Discord later that night on the voice chat, so I asked if he could offer some enlightenment on that subject. Out of interest, is it soft targeting or using some sort of hitbox registry for different parts of the body?
It's using a hitbox registry that it divides into 3 separate locations from the upper body, lower body, and head. Right now we're using a multiplier against those different hitbox locations, so damage against the head obviously is going to do more. And then additionally it matches the model mesh exactly on the hitbox, so it's a 1-to-1 ratio on the body mesh.
So Ashes currently uses 3 ragdoll hitbox registry points: lower body, upper body, and the head. Which I actually found quite surprising, as MMOs often use soft targeting to simulate action combat. So while it's exceptionally cool that you can headshot people, it does bring up some questions regarding TTK or time to kill rates and balance, as well as the potential to effectively one-shot people. If they do keep the 3 hitbox system, it would be actually pretty cool if they made crowd control do different things depending on the part hit. For an example of this concept just right off the top of my head, if an Archer CC hit the enemy in the legs, it would cause a snare. If they were hit in the chest, it would restrict the lungs, reducing stamina in some way, and being hit in the head would cause some sort of blindness effect. I personally think that would be a fairly innovative way to approach CC. Also in this scene you notice that players can currently weapon switch on the fly as the bow gets replaced by a 2-handed sword. And finally in this scene you can see purple tentacles forming in the mist, which kind of reminds me of Hydroid's ability from Warframe. And yet again we see another magical floaty orb thingy. If we go back a few frames, we can see the E prompt appear when the orb is highlighted, and as a guess, this is how you loot player corpses or receive rewards from killing opponents. Why the orb instead of directly from the corpse? Well, as a guess, it's probably in case corpses get completely chunked like in the previous clip, but maybe there's another reason. It could also be a battlefield or point collecting mechanic also. Another scene ensues with sexy dodge rolls, melee and crossbow action. I'm unsure if the crossbow shot missed or the dodge roll has some form of iframe attached to it. Steven did mention a long time ago that most dodges will have iframes, so that could have been the case here. Though it does look more to be the case of the user just missing the shot. What is intriguing is the next ability in play, which is the ability to shoot out at range a wide sonar detection area of effect. And on impact, it highlights all enemies in range, including the ability to see through walls. It looks pretty fancy as well. And what I really like about this ability is the fact it's ranged. Generally, scouts in MMOs don't often have many abilities or tools to help facilitate that role other than their own eyeballs. So it's nice to see something that's commonplace in FPS scene being transferred into an MMO environment for a cool twist. And as an added benefit, you can just see how far away one individual is, giving you an idea how impressive the range on this skill is. It seems to have a fairly decent duration as well. I really like it. And another couple of scenes arrive showing off the gloriousness of the tentacle area of effect ability. You know, Intrepid should really consider releasing this game in Japan first. I've got a feeling it would be quite successful there. Now the next scene is fairly interesting. One of the biggest complaints about Alpha Zero during the PAX playtests, aside from the horrible QTE bar thing, was that melee classes didn't have enough gap closers and it was almost impossible to keep up with rangers who could kite for days while doing full DPS. But look at the melee gap closing ability now, like holy crap, that is a lot of distance to rapidly traverse. I mean, just let me slow this down for you guys. I mean, if melee can close gaps like that, I'd be so tempted to make some sort of melee magic hybrid class, as that just seems exceptionally insane. Though again, there's that reoccurring issue when the enemy player sits behind your character, it currently affects the camera angle, which sort of needs fixing. Once again, this is why I suggested earlier that the camera needs to be allowed to zoom out further while using melee weapons, because you don't want to run into the issue where your camera clips forward like this. Still, I love how the new melee attacks look. It's extremely flashy despite the melee being a little basic in terms of attacks currently. Perhaps some form of combo system to add variety to attacks would be quite nice. In the next segment we get some more of that hit scan wand action, but you will notice some little bouncy globes of explodiness exploding. This is actually the brand new potion launcher in action. Some fun facts about the potion launcher is that the globes will bounce, and if you were to hit a wall at close range, they could even bounce back and kill you. If the globes hit players though, they will explode on impact. The ammo type, or more accurately the potion of the launchers, can also be changed for various effects, which not all have been disclosed yet. But we do know they have various effects such as exploding and freezing. A brief clip of the teleportation skill ensues, which also shows that minor objects in the way, such as this fence, wouldn't normally allow you to go through, but it seems as long as the crosshair has a clear path, it can teleport you to that location. And that will give the player some creative and interesting escape options in PvP to play with, as well as to be used engagement in PvP like this part. The next series of clips details some staff action in which a lot of players get quite literally shafted. Shafted. I have to say though that teleport is going to be a god tier skill in terms of utility. It'll be interesting if Intrepid made some kind of bait or clever counter for it. One thing to note in this scene is the fire blast skill which seems to be used here. It seems to have an exceptionally short range, also to note that the staff seems to have some really useful lunge effect, which is good for a gap closer. This player quickly swaps to a bow and snags a headshot, though visually it appears to miss. I was a little bit confused by that, but might have just been a visual error, or the one-to-one mesh hitbox Steven spoke of might be a little bit out of tune in this instance. The next scene is more of the same of what we saw earlier with the almost but not quite spammy meteors. I didn't see anything that we hadn't seen previously here. The next section starts off as a melee duel. For a second you can see the jump height, which seems pretty high in relation to the other player. It's not that interesting though. For a few moments Frost Prime seems to make an appearance. Seriously, the armor is giving me some major Warframe vibes. From here it's more of the same skills for a while, and I didn't notice anything interesting for a few seconds apart from more body destruction and the appearance of the potion launcher. However, in this scene, I did notice a few things. First, 3 meteors came flying from somewhere. It's hard to tell if it was some form of cluster augment for the initial meteor or something else. I didn't see this occur in any of the previous scenes with the meteor spam, so it has me wondering where exactly it came from. Though as the camera pans, we do see other things. First, the visuals go dark for a second, not sure if this was from video editing or it's a minor blind effect. Or perhaps it's something else, but it does happen. The next thing to pay attention to is this portal. Is this where the 3 meteors came flying from? You can almost see the flames casting out of it. Perhaps it's a respawn point for the battleground. Maybe the meteors are an automated defense if you get too close, or maybe it's a player skill we haven't seen yet. Though the portal itself does remind me of the terrain destruction skill from way back in one of the early combat trailers. Though given its length and duration, it most likely isn't. And finally, here's a screenshot of what seems to be a temporary UI, complete with compass, reticule, HP bars and a minimap. Ultimately, the trailer seems to leave me with huge amounts of questions opposed to any real solid answers. So let's bring this analysis to a conclusion with my thoughts on this latest iteration of combat. Well, in my opinion, this is the alpha combat we should have seen several months ago at PAX. This is the direction they should have been working towards from the very start. Some people during the Alpha Zero were yelling at the top of their lungs that the new combat footage back then was amazing, but I didn't agree with it. The slow pace, the genericness of it, the quick time event bar thing, the animations, well, there was just so much that was painstakingly average, and it was just ultimately too damn similar to the conventional MMOs that we've played before. You can actually check out my old video to what I thought of the old combat. In fact, a lot of bigger YouTubers than myself, such as Lazy Peon, The Hive Leader, Fever, Eloa, and Cry all gave me considerable amount of praise for when I gave my opinion on it. I mean, sure, the current combat might be perhaps a little bit too much like Warframe, it would also appear to have some Elder Scrolls Online elements as well, but now they have a solid foundation and direction to go in, a good starting point to work from. I mean, sure, some of the spell effects might currently be a little overtuned and require some toning down, especially in large-scale PvP. Otherwise, we will see nothing but fiery apocalypses of meteors and enough overcooked purple tentacles to upset an entire nation of sushi chefs. But overall, I finally feel good about Ashes of Creation's combat. At the end of the day, I am a huge Ashes fan, though perhaps not a White Knighting fanboy. And part of the reason I will actively and heavily criticise Ashes, the developer's choices and decisions, is mostly because I don't want to see this game repeat mistakes that other games have made. I want this game to be the literal best it can be, and if I have to point out things that I believe to be potentially huge flaws in the game, regardless if I receive hate or flack from the community, I will do it, and I will do it because I care so deeply about it. And if that video I made so many months ago now had any impact on this choice and new direction of combat, I honestly could not be happier. Intrepid said last year that the response to the old combat was overwhelmingly positive, but I don't think it was. I believe the response to this new combat is truly overwhelming. When I showed the old initial combat and gameplay to my friends last December, few cared or had little to no interest. But now when I show them this new combat footage, their eyes literally light up. They see hope. They see the MMO they wanted, but AAA companies could never deliver. They happily share it with their friends, begin to talk about it, begin to go through the documents and wikis to find out more information on this game. And when those things happen, Stephen, if you are listening, you know you are on the right track. So for a first pass on Action Combat Intrepid, to you I say an exceptional job well done. As for what can be improved, well, I think I will leave that part until I've played it myself, which thanks to being in the content creator program will hopefully be very soon, TM. If you find my analysis and opinions useful, please do like, subscribe and leave a comment below, and as always guys, thank you for watching.
It's
So,
very
what did
nice
you
to
guys
actually walk
think?
into that.
It's freaking amazing, yo. Like,
Was it a good first pass? Did we spend some time doing the right thing on the
Yes,
action side of
100%.
stuff?
All
Yeah.
my worries are gone.
I mean, it's a bit rugged still, but, you know, from what we can see, massive improvement. In fact, just drop tab targeting altogether, we're good.
Unbelievable. I think it's good enough that the system will allow you to kind of gear yourself in one direction. I think that's-
$500 well
There was
spent.
no like spell highlighting, so like I don't know, it's like fluid.
I think my favorite part was the lack of quick time bars.
Unbelievable.